Today we're talking about 5 ways the INFJ unconsciously intimidates others. Most of the time when you think of an INFJ being intimidating, it is really based on somebody provoked the INFJ had to strike back, they had to bring out their dark side, and then people are completely surprised and don't know what happened. But the truth is that most people who are intimidated by the INFJ have been intimidated before the INFJ actively did anything to provoke that. So today we're really looking into the unconscious ways an INFJ intimidates others just by being themselves. And we're going to ask the question, is this really something we should be worried about? Is it something we should change? Or is it something that we should actually embrace? Before we get started, I want to remind you, if you haven't done this so far, to download the free poster on the INFJ Epic Life Formula. And if you want to take it to the next level, then get the INFJ Epic Life audio guide. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. Number 1, the INFJ is really unfazed. So this is something that a lot of people misinterpret as the INFJ having a small ego, because when another person, has some insecurities or they're really boastful about something, the INFJ is really good at taking a step back. The INFJ allows the other person to be themselves. They're not really triggered easily, and that makes a lot of people nervous. It actually makes the INFJ very intimidating to people, and that's one of the reasons why so many people, keep on attacking the INFJ, because they want to have a reaction. They want to find out, what's that person about? When have I hit a nerve? When have I crossed a boundary? That's their way of understanding what the other person is all about. And the INFJ is really good at, taking a step back, taking another step back, making themselves smaller, because it's actually a tactic of ours to give the other person the opportunity to pretty much show who they are and where they want to find out what's going on, how they're going to do that, so we actually understand the other person better. The interesting thing here is the whole question about the ego, because most INFJs believe, oh, I don't have a big ego, I can just minimize myself, I can dim my light, I can let another person shine. But what we forget is that our ego is actually based on the fact that we can't do that. So we still feel powerful because we can take a step back. It's actually in those moments where we have to fight back, where we have to show our nature, where we have to show where we have been hurt and hit. Those are the moments when we feel most vulnerable, and that's when we really get out of our ego. And this is really noteworthy because it's different than how other people would feel vulnerable. It's really different than, how we would interpret having an ego. So it's important for us as INFJs to understand that this is a tactic we use in order to protect our ego. Because every single time we can minimize ourselves, we can dim our life, we can continue pretending like we're above that. When in the end, when it comes down to it, we have to fight back. And so just the fact of the matter that we can put ourselves back to such an extent is very intimidating to others, because it's something they are not used to and they can't really understand what the INFJ is all about. This makes people very, very nervous. So when it comes down to the question, should we continue this behavior, we just have to make sure why we're doing it. Understand that this is not a way of being a better person or being a bigger person. In a lot of cases, it's actually a way of protection and a protection of our ego. And that this probably will lead to some kind of conflict in the long run. We will lose connection because we're not really being ourselves. We're not allowing others to see what triggers us, what makes us uncomfortable, and so on. So it isn't necessarily always a good road to take if you take it too far. Using it as a skill, using it as a mechanism to help others to understand a situation is perfectly fine for everybody involved, but we just have to be aware of what we're doing and to just make it conscious. That way we can still get the benefits out of it, we can create a positive, environment, we can allow others to be themselves. We just have to make sure that we don't go overboard in order to, keep our vulnerabilities hidden to a complete extent. Like, it's okay to show others when they've crossed a boundary. You're not making yourself weak because of it. Number 2, the INFJ is aware of others' insecurities and deep secrets. So this is something that may be obvious to a lot of people, but when the other person recognizes that the INFJ is aware of it, that's when it gets intimidating. So a lot of INFJs are so aware of, oh, I see that person, they have an issue with, how they get perceived in certain situations. I can just tell by the way they're acting. but the other person has no idea that you are aware of that. Nobody else is aware of that. They were able to hide it for so long, and most of the time they might even be hiding it from themselves. It's the moment when you try to create an authentic connection, when you try to create honesty, and this is always based on us saying, I know what you're doing here, but you don't have to be afraid. Like, I'm not judging you because of that. And that's when people freak out, and that's when they get really, really intimidated. That's when you have those situations where people ghost the INFJ or have, extreme reactions that are completely, out of context or out of the ordinary, because it's such a hit to their ego, it's such a hit to their protective shelf, and it's very intimidating. So keeping that in mind, we just always have to be aware of there's going to be such a reaction. We don't have to create an authentic connection on that level if the other person hasn't disclosed this information, freely. Very often we as INFJs think, well, I see that this is what you're going through. I see that these are your insecurities, so let's connect there. They haven't really actively approached you and said, listen, I have these insecurities, and that is the reason why I'm acting in a certain way, and I want to create an authentic connection. Just keep that in mind. If another person hasn't actively said something to you and they had the intention of you knowing their insecurities, their deep secrets, this is not something that we should openly be talking about with that person, because it's just, a skill we have. It's not something the other person has openly and freely, given to us and said, let's talk about this. Number 3. The INFJ is able to change their self-image immediately. So it's all about how the INFJ perceives themselves, but also their reality or the other person. If another person does something that just completely throws you off and you understand, oh, I had a completely different image of that person, and I also saw myself differently because of, the connection that we're having and the dynamic that we're having. So the moment I start seeing the other person in a different light, I see myself in a different light. Because keep in mind, the INFJ is always a little bit different with every person they interact with. They always connect on the levels that, they have in common with that person, or the areas that are of similar interest, whatever it may be. And so when you see something in a person that is just, different than what you expected, you automatically change your approach to them. Your entire self-image in this moment changes, and the INFJ can do this rapidly. So the moment they've decided, oh, okay, I'm not going to put that person in this category, now they're in another category because now I have more information about them, then the INFJ switches up really fast. And, this is on the one hand a great skill, but it's also something that intimidates people drastically because they're not used to somebody switching up like this. And it's scary and it's unpredictable because then, they're completely unaware of who you actually are. They had this image before and then it changes without them having any control over it. And this applies to INFJ specifically because the INFJ, on top of everything else, tries to be the best version for the other person. So often we do that, right? So we know that person is seeking for somebody who's very understanding or very adventurous or very funny, and subconsciously we show them this version of ourselves just because we don't want to rock the boat. This happens very often when we're not consciously approaching a situation. And then when you switch it up, they understand, okay, this is somebody completely different. And most of the time, because we can dim our light, because we can, take ourselves back, we give a lot of room for the other person to interpret us the way they want to interpret us. And so once you switch it up, the, shock is even bigger. The fear, the intimidation is even bigger because they had such a clear image of who they wanted you to be, positively or negatively, because you gave them the room for that. And so the moment you switch it up, it's a complete, change. It would be different if you, approach a situation and make it very clear from an early point on that you have some kind of boundaries that are not in alignment with what the other person would like. With time, a lot of INFJs learn to do that because they understand, okay, no matter who I meet, if I want to have any kind of authentic relationship with them, and this doesn't have to be, a romantic relationship, it can be coworkers, it can be neighbors, whatever it may be, but, there has to be some real essence of you, that you're not just going to be this blank slate that everybody can project onto. And so this is something we really have to keep in mind, that, you know, if it comes down to it, we can really change up quickly. And this can be very intimidating to others. This can be very uncomfortable. And it's also not a nice process for us. So this is maybe even one more reason why we should aim to understand who we are, to step out as that version more often, talk to people in such a way. There has to be just like this solid core that is not up for debate. That no matter who comes into your life, no matter who you're talking to, what kind of dynamic you have with that person, it's unshakable and you're the one who defines that. Reason number 4, the INFJ is very independent. This is very intimidating to a lot of people because we don't need to play by any rules. We know what we have to do in order to be part of society. We know what is accepted, what is morally okay for us. But a lot of things that are unspoken rules, you know, don't apply to us. We see that they exist, we can observe them, but they seem like a suggestion. They're not what we have to do. And for a lot of people, it really is a must, because if they don't play by those rules, they're not going to be part of a certain group. And this is something the INFJ does differently and lives differently than a lot of people. We don't need those things. Like, that's one of the reasons why INFJs have been considered so weird and so out there, because we're not afraid to live that out. Like, we're totally okay with that. Yes, there are moments where we don't want to be judged, where it feels uncomfortable, but we still go there. And for other people, it seems like they're always playing by those rules of what is accepted, what is not accepted, because that way they're safe. They're not weird, they're not going to be ostracized, like they're just fine, but they never really get to live out their authentic self, because in order to live out your authentic self, you have to allow yourself to bring those elements out that are uniquely you, and they're just by default not going to fit into that box. And so when you show up as an INFJ and you live that out, it is very intimidating to a lot of people because they're not daring to do that. And so subconsciously they make up those stories of, oh, that person is weird, that person, you know, doesn't really like to do what we're doing. Like, you know, there's so many stories that people tell themselves, but we always have to keep in mind, if it was really just something like, okay, that person is weird, but, you know, they're just different than me, you know, I'll let them do their thing. But if that person has a strong reaction towards you when all you're doing is minding your business and going about your day and living life the way you want, then it's probably because there's such a deep reaction from the other person. You know, it intimidates them that you can just do something that for them seems impossible. And number 5, the INFJ is often very intimidating to others subconsciously because the INFJ is so charming. So the problem with the INFJ understanding others so well is that we know how to compliment people. And I'm not just talking about, okay, I go there and I say, oh, you have nice hair, or your eyes are so sparkly, you know? It's just that the INFJ understands who that person wants to be and how they want to be seen. And the INFJ is able to not only see that, but reflect back to them exactly the reaction that the other person is hoping for. And we do that with good intentions. But because of that, it is very intimidating to another person when, you know, they try to do whatever they can so another person sees them for who they want to be seen, and then you show up and they haven't really earned that. You know, most people go through life and they have learned, I have to earn to be liked, you know, because the way I am is just not good enough. And so when you come across and you're like, oh, but you're wonderful the way you are, and you're really living that out, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable because they cannot handle it, right? A lot of people then, you know, shy away from the INFJ, ghost the INFJ because it's just too intense. This reaction is really intimidating to other people. And so the question is, what are we going to do about this? Like, are we really going to step away from that? And, you know, my answer to this is yes and no. People have to deserve that you're being way kinder to them than they're paying back to you. So what happens here in most situations is you're being kind towards somebody and they're, you know, not being very kind to you because they don't understand what's going on. Then we go overboard. We say, I'm going to be even kinder. I'm going to be even more understanding. And that makes people even more aggressive. So you just have to ask yourself, yeah, I am able to see what that person, you know, is looking for. And I rather kill somebody with kindness. Like, what is the bad thing about this? The problem with this is that you're just one person. You're not changing their perception of themselves because you're being that image. And if another person doesn't treat you right, then it's on you to say, then I'm stepping back. Because this is one of the main reasons why so many INFJs get in abusive relationships, get into friendships that are one-sided or relationships that are one-sided, because it's always the INFJ trying to prove to the other person, I just have good intentions. And the problem is that when you keep doing this, what you're actually showing that person is you're not valuing yourself. Because you allow the other person to hit you and hit you and hit you again, emotionally, verbally, whatever it may be. Just, they're not kind to you, but you keep sticking around, you keep giving them what they're looking for, because it feels like, how can I do it any other way? But as I said, what we're forgetting in this process is that we're not taking care of ourselves. And we don't think that we need to. But when you start really working on yourself and you start building yourself up and stepping into your INFJ epic life and doing all of those things that make you more you and make you appreciate life more, you will start automatically to protect yourself more, because then you understand no matter what that person is going through, I can only help another person if they're first off appreciative of it, and second of all, if they treat me the way I deserve to be treated, and I'm the one who defines that. And it should never be that you say, oh, I'm allowed to be treated badly because you're going through so much. It always has to start with, I treat myself well. Because what you have to remember on top of everything is, you're telling that person, you deserve better, you deserve to love yourself. But what you're showing them is that you're not loving yourself. So you're being actually an example of not choosing yourself when you want them to do that. When you start choosing yourself and when you start, okay, I'm going to treat myself well, I'm not going to allow others to treat me badly, you're actually being the biggest help you can be by being an inspiration, because they have to save themselves. You can be there as, a motivation, you can be there as a rock that they can climb up on, but you can't really go down with them to, all of those negative places and expect them to pull themselves up. And the best thing you can do in order to help them in the situation is to choose yourself first. This is not just good for them, but of course for you as well. So remember, if you want some more guidelines into choosing yourself, creating that INFJ Epic Life that you are looking for, then check out the free poster on the INFJ Epic Life formula. And if you want to take it to the next level, then get the INFJ Epic Life audio guide today. Everything you need to know you can find in the links in the description. And if you want to watch another video now that is in alignment with today's topic, then watch the video Why the INFJ Breaks Egos Without Even Trying.